Hello, men, and welcome to the podcast, Messages for Men. I do appreciate you being here. The purpose of this podcast is for men, about men, on some of the challenges we face and how we can get better. My name is Brad Dombaugh, and I'm going to be your host today, and today's topic is, I'm just not good enough. How many of us have felt that? I think when you talk to men, most of us at some point in our life have probably felt that way. We felt inadequate. Maybe we felt inadequate athletically. Not as good, and we don't stack up against somebody else. We may feel like we're not as attractive as another guy. Can't get that date because we're not. Maybe we feel like we're not good enough because we didn't go to the right school. We didn't major in the right subject. We're not good enough to get that promotion or job. But the problem is, when we begin to believe this narrative that runs in our mind, we don't decipher whether there's truth to it or not. It can be self-limiting and self-sabotage. And it really does limit our ability to move forward and really do the things that we'd like to do in life. You know, in my effort to to try to obtain a little bit more of a secure attachment style, I've really gone through the brain and done some research, read the books, watched podcasts. I've done a lot of research on the mind and kind of how it works. And I will tell you, the mind's a fascinating thing. It's got over a billion different cells in the mind. It can process information at a speed that no supercomputer can actually do. It about 40 to 60 million bytes of information per second. Yeah, per second. So it's a pretty cool thing that can do a lot for us. But the problem is, guys, if we don't use it right, we don't figure it out, it can also help be our downfall in terms of self-sabotage, what we want to do. So what I want to focus on today is really two parts of the mind: the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So the conscious mind, just so we understand, that kind of controls a higher executive level thought. It may control, for example, how you analyze, rationalize, and how you look at things. The subconscious mind is really what I want to focus on, because that's really 95%. Subconscious mind controls memories, your experiences, your thoughts, your beliefs, your hopes, your dreams, your fears. Everything is stored. You got to remember, the subconscious mind is a reservoir of your life. It records in your mind everything that happens. You may not remember it because it runs in the background. We don't realize it's there many times, but it is. And I'm going to kind of get into that and explain it as well. So maybe for better understanding, I can kind of explain the conscious mind and the subconscious mind this way, which may bring a little more clarity to it. Think of the conscious mind and subconscious mind like your cell phone. So when you interact with your cell phone, you, for example, open up and write an email, you're using your conscious mind to do that. But do understand, too, that behind that cell phone is a storage, and it's constantly storing information. And the computer runs on a central processing unit, and that's your subconscious. The storage of information is your subconscious. And actually, when you experience things in life, those are apps that have been put on your phone. So you can have an app on your phone that says, I'm fearful about this. I'm not good enough in that regard. I'm not athletic enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not attractive enough. So these are apps that are loaded on your mind and beliefs that you have about yourself because of the experience that you've gone through. Now, do understand that most of the apps are loaded on your cell phone between the age of around 2 to 7. Why? Because that's the age when we begin to understand the world around us and our environment. We begin to interpret the world. You got to remember, we're not born with fears. We're not born with inadequacies. We learn those. We learn those through experiences. So I think it's important to note at this point that the subconscious mind is really running in the background all the time, and it's really the silent partner that controls you. 95% of our mind, what you think, believe, and do, and the habits you form and the memories you have, is because of your subconscious mind. You ever had that moment of clarity when you thought, why did I think that? Where'd that come from? Where'd that thought pop into my head? That's your subconscious mind speaking to you. It's like what I've seen over many times explained. It's like an iceberg, where 5% of the iceberg is above the water, and that's your conscious mind, and 95% of your mind is below the water, and that's your subconscious mind. So I'm going to focus quite heavily on the subconscious mind, because it's about rewiring, to some extent, the subconscious mind to help us get in a better place, in a better state. For a moment, let me give you a couple examples of kind of how the subconscious versus conscious mind works. Do you remember when you first learned to drive a car? That was all conscious mind. You try to figure out the foot, feet. In my case, I'm old enough to have to learn to drive on a stick. I had to learn how the clutch worked, the brake, and the gas all at once. You have to learn where the blinker is, up and down. You have to learn how to turn, how to navigate on and off ramps, understand where everybody's at on the road. You were 100% involved in the conscious mind. But what happens over time, right, those conscious behaviors really get embedded in your subconscious mind, and you get to the point where driving becomes nothing more than a habit. It's almost on autopilot, where you can drive, and you may drive for an hour, not even remember the road you drove because you're thinking about something else. That's what the subconscious mind can do for you. But the mind, like I said, the mind can be a very powerful thing, and kind of let me explain in my life and other examples of how the subconscious mind works and kind of how it can sabotage you unless you kind of change this narrative. When I was a kid, my dad was pretty hard on me. In many ways, I felt like he abandoned me when I needed him. He just wasn't there. He had his own issues to deal with, and I certainly understand that. And I do remember a specific time when I was probably 7 or 8 at the dinner table, and my mom asked me one night, what I want to do when I grow up. And I said, I want to be a doctor. And my dad said, whoa, Nelly, you're not going to be a doctor. He said, look, son, we come from a family of educators. Your grandfather was an educator. Your grandmother was an educator. I'm a history teacher. You're going to be a history teacher, and you're going to do this as well. This is who we are. This is our people. Kind of stay within the realm of who you are and what you are. And a belief system outside of that, son, that's only going to do nothing but disappoint you. I think in some regards, my dad was trying to protect me. But in some regards, it created a narrative in my mind that I can't really do anything else besides be an educator. And I felt some of this even my early adulthood, and I actually felt some of this even when I got older. I remember a time, for example, when I was building a home in my 50s, and all my dad said to me was, I certainly hope you can afford this, because in this neighborhood is probably surrounded with lawyers and doctors, and is that really your people? Well, once again, maybe trying to protect me, but it creates this narrative in my mind. So I remember specifically a time when I had to meet with some developers, and there's millions of dollars on the table, and I had to present my side, or the point I was trying to make on it. And I remember feeling a great deal of anxiety. And I thought to myself, where is this coming from? Why do I feel so anxious? And once I got to a quiet place and kind of thought through it, I remember the narrative. I remember the narrative that resonates in my mind and subconscious over and over and over again. The narrative that said, this is not who you are. This is not what you are. You need to be with your people, and your people are not doctors. You don't live with doctors and lawyers. That's not who you are. So it took me a long time to try to figure out, how do I overcome that anxiousness and the anxiety associated with that? And I'll kind of explain how I did this, and maybe it's helpful for you too. Let me give you another example real quick. This involves a friend of mine. A friend of mine worked, still does, in corporate America. Absolutely hates it. Hates the good old boy network. Hates everything about it. Doesn't like his job. So he and I had multiple conversations about owning a small business, which I did at the time, because he wanted the autonomy. He wanted the freedom to run his own life and his own business and do things his way. I certainly understand that. But we had multiple conversations, hour upon hour upon hour. And at one point, I finally said to him, what are we doing? You're kind of wasting your time and my time because you're not doing anything with it or about it. I wasn't going to provide an echo chamber for him that I could just tell him, then validate him and tell him he's a great guy. I was challenging him to say, if you really want to own a small business, you got to start moving forward. Well, I didn't hear from him about 2 weeks. And he finally called me one day and said, Brad, he said, I've kind of realized why I'm fearful of doing that. In my culture, shame is a big thing. You don't shame your name, you don't shame your family, you don't shame yourself. We come from a culture of doctors and lawyers, but we certainly in the business, we don't take risks. They're going to put us at the point where we may go bankrupt. That brings shame upon us and shame upon the family. And that resonated with his mind and his subconscious, I think, day after day. And he got to the point where he could not move forward, and he never did buy a small business. And he still works in corporate America today because he couldn't overcome this thought, this narrative from the subconscious. The subconscious can affect us in relationships. Let me give you an example. If you're a young man and You've been in relationships with a woman, for example, and at the point when you become vulnerable, let's say, and start talking a little bit about what Carl Jung would talk about, the dark shadow, you start to present a little bit more of yourself and your personality, then that kind of comes out. And it doesn't go well, for example, and you find that she kind of maybe belittles you, devalues you, and dismisses you. When you're in a relationship with a new woman, for example, you may get to the point where you want to talk to her about who you really are and the challenge you've had in your life and what you go through. Because you want to meet her needs and you're hoping she can meet your needs as well. But I tell you what, at some point, the subconscious rises again with a narrative that says, whoa, 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 little buddy, stop right there. Do you remember the last 3 times you did this? What happened? It caused you a tremendous amount of pain. Don't do that. Well, in this case, if you follow your subconscious mind, you may not do it. You may never become vulnerable, but you may never have the relationship that you really want with that woman either. You have to remember something about the subconscious. Yeah, it's a repository of a lot of information. It's your experiences, your life, your memory, your hopes, dreams, and everything associated with it. But first of all, the subconscious doesn't know fact from fiction, and I think it's important to note. It doesn't know time. It doesn't understand things. But it does serve as a protective mechanism because you've experienced of your life, you could experience some trauma, some really deep trauma, for example. Some hardships, some narrative that you didn't want to hear. But sometimes this narrative is rewired over and over and over again where you begin to think it yourself. And you begin to wonder, where is this coming from and why am I thinking it? It's coming from your subconscious, who in a way is trying to protect you from pain. You know, in some case, I know my subconscious tries to protect me from abandonment, which I feel like my dad did. And I struggle with it because it's like, Brad, do you want to feel that pain again? Do you want to go through that? Let's not do that. I like consistency. I like the narrative where we're at, but it keeps you stuck in that narrative and it keeps you stuck in life and you're not allowed to get out of it. So hopefully I can talk a little bit about some ideas that I have on kind of how we can overcome this, and we can overcome the self-thought, the negative thought in our minds that runs, or reel that runs, that comes at us in a way that we begin to believe that narrative. Because you got to remember that, you know, what fires in your mind wires in your mind. So if you consistently think this pattern, it kind of turns into kind of your personality or habit, or kind of think this is who you are. There's a couple things that I have found that have worked for me, and I continue to work with it, and I find some hope in it. Number one, I would encourage you every morning to get out of bed and to think about gratitude. For example, this morning, and I wrote it down, I'm grateful to Matt, my buddy who follows me on this channel and watches some podcasts, and said, hey, Brad, would you like to come to my studio and shoot a podcast? You can use my equipment. Grateful for him. Grateful for good friends. Sometimes when we're grateful for things, it kind of opens up the day for us. Reminds us, no matter how bad we get, no matter how much anxiety, depression we feel, no matter where we're at, that there is some good in our life. And I think that's important. That does remind us of that. So the second thing that I've gone into is, believe it or not, the last 3 or 4 months is meditation. I know some of you may think, oh, this is woo-woo stuff, whatever. The meditation doesn't do anything for you. This is all psychobabble. And I kind of thought the same thing until I tried it and tried to get into it. And I was consistent with it. And that's what I'm trying to say. Meditation needs to be consistent. But what I do find myself doing, for about 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night, I just try to focus on my breathing and meditate. Inhale and exhale. And it's freaking hard. It's tough to do because my minds are all over the place. My mind has all sorts of invasive thoughts to think about what I got to do today, what I got to do tomorrow, what I failed to do yesterday. It's all over the board. And I have to struggle to bring myself back in to the point where I just focus on my breathing. But let me tell you kind of what it's doing for me, is that sometimes I spend too much time in the sympathetic nervous system, which is more about fight or flight, because I'm thinking about all the stuff I got to get done and what I should be doing, what I failed to do, and who I need to contact and talk to, and all the things that we have to face in life. But when I do that, it elevates my stress level, higher levels of cortisol constantly running through your bloodstream. And to stay in this state of chronic stress all the time is really unhealthy, and that's not the way we were designed, by the way. It's unhealthy in the sense it can increase inflammation, it can create heart disease, high blood pressure, risk for stroke and heart attack, digestive disorders. It can affect your mental state. In fact, it can induce anxiety and depression, for example. So living in the chronic state of high stress with an overload of your sympathetic nervous system and cortisol and adrenaline, it's not the place you want to be. There's a time and place for it, but it's not continuous. So through meditation, I'm able to move more into the parasympathetic nervous system, where it's more about digest and rest. It allows my mind to slow down, and slower brain waves, the alpha waves, actually help you. And if some people are really good at meditation, they can spend much of their time in the theta brain waves, which are really slow. And this is kind of where they can, discover a little bit more about who they are and what they are in the world around them. I know for me that when I do it, I just feel better. I feel more relaxed. And when intrusive thoughts happen, I kind of think, and then I have ability to let them go. And the same thing at night when I do this before I go to sleep. It helps me get into a position where I do sleep better. I feel better before I go to sleep. And here's a little trick too that I found. If there's something that's really bugging me, I'll write it down or journal it before I go to sleep. And it's amazing what the subconscious mind can do. There are times when I'll wake up with this issue or problem at 3 a.m. and think, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I need to contact. I know what I should be doing about this. Or I wake up in the morning after plenty of deep sleep and REM sleep, and I'm like, oh, this kind of came together now. I understand and I see what I should be doing. I know this person can help me solve this problem. It's amazing how many problems at night can be solved through the subconscious mind as it begins to organize itself through sleep and prepare for the next day. So don't think that meditation can't do something for you. I just encourage you to try it for at least 30 days. Stick with it, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. I'm going to tell you, it feels like 5 hours, by the way, and it is difficult to do. But I found I start feeling better when I do that. I think the third thing I try to do is learn to basically challenge every thought when I can and when I can. Where did that come from? Because I know it comes from the subconscious mind, and I know the subconscious mind doesn't really know reality. It doesn't know fact from fiction. So am I created a narrative that's not even true? Let me give you an example. I know the other day I was concerned because I needed to hear a text back from somebody on a business proposition that we were doing is important that I heard back that day because there was a timeline on it and I didn't. And so I became frustrated and a little anxious because it's like, why didn't this person get back to me? Are they going to abandon the project? Are they abandon me in this entire place and time? What is going on? And I had to stop and think, because this was the narrative that's kind of created in my mind. It's like, Brad, you may get abandoned from this guy. This project may go under because he may not think you're good enough. He may not think you're worthy of this. He may not getting back to you because he doesn't want to do it. And all this negative self-talk, the track that was running through my subconscious, that was brought to my forefront of my mind. And I was really grappling with this, but I'm going to tell you what helped me is I'm like, stop. And if you can meditate for a second, that's great, but I'm like, stop. And I thank my subconscious. I say, thank you, subconscious. I know you're there to protect me. And I know the narrative is based upon the experiences I've gone through, and some of them have been great. And this wiring has brought out basically bad memories, bad experiences, and you're trying to protect me from the next one. And then I think, but is there any logic to what my subconscious is saying? Is there logic behind the guy that maybe abandoning this project? And I think more logically and rationally about it. Well, so what I think, I dip into my understanding of experience with this guy, and I think, no, that's not true. I've dealt with this guy before. It's always been a good experience. It's a good project. I know what I'm doing. I know what we're doing. There's got to be something else going on, logically, rationally. And so I'm not really going to spend time worrying about that. And lo and behold, he had some emergency going on, and that's why he couldn't get back. But instead of me ruminating in this constantly all night and feeling like I'm being abandoned or feeling like this isn't going well and feeling the anxiety of that, what I try to do is I challenge every single thought I have. Where is that coming from? I hear you, subconscious. I know what you're saying to me. I know the talk track. I know the narrative. But is there truth to this? And I stop and think for a second, let me find out this is logically, does this even make any sense? Is this rational thought? And if you can work yourself through this mindset, you can actually create, when they talk about it, where you fire neurons, you wire neurons. So new neurons can be created through firing and thinking about it and rewiring this. So what happens with me is I have a different thought. And this thought becomes an emotion or a feeling that I feel. I have a thought of, well, this isn't rational. I feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about where I am. And if you do this enough, it can become a habit. And once this habit can become part of your personality of who you are, you can really change the talk track. You can really change the wiring of subconscious if you spend the time to challenge everything you think and find out where that's coming from and what that voice is really telling you and where that voice is coming from. You know, man, probably the next thing I would probably encourage you to focus on, which I've had to focus on, is what affects the talk track in your life? What is holding you back? What are the self-sabotaging beliefs that you have about yourself? I mean, you know, for example, if you believe, I'm not good enough for this job. You know, I may have had the experience, I've got the education level, I qualify for this job, but I'm just not good enough. Once again, stop. Where is that coming from? Why do you believe that? See if you can, you know, delve into the dark side of your shadow and figure out where this experience, where this narrative came from. And if you can bring it to your forefront of your mind, you can evaluate it for its logic, accuracy, and whether it's rational. And you can actually say to yourself, I've had experiences in the past where I was turned down for jobs. Maybe I had a father who told me I was an idiot. I'll never amount to much. I'll never accomplish anything. Maybe I have older brothers and sisters who constantly reminded me that I shouldn't be seen or heard. Maybe I lived in a chaotic household. Maybe my parents weren't able to meet my needs because they couldn't meet their own needs, and therefore I felt unloved and unlovable. Nobody's going to love me. Well, a lot of this stuff comes from the subconscious, but you've got to stop once again and think to yourself, well, reach in your bag of experiences and say, I've had a lot of good experience. I've been successful in so many different ways. I've got the college degree. I've got the education. I've got the experience. Why not me? That's logical. That's rewiring your mind in a logical way that says, I'm not really going to follow that narrative, the subconscious. I know the subconscious is going to try to protect me from pain, and I have fear because of that. But that's not really logical. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because what happened back then doesn't mean I'm not qualified today. So I would encourage you, men, to challenge everything mentally. Anytime you hear your subconscious talking, find out where it's coming from and find out there's a reality to it and find out there's any logic to it. Because many times it's not. It's just a narrative that's been created in your mind. And you can learn to overcome that. And when you have these new thoughts and it fires a new neuron, there's a new pathway that can possibly be developed. And it takes time. I'm not going to admit it takes time. And for those of you who've been through some severe trauma, I understand. That's an emotion that's been embedded in your brain. It's been seared there. And trying to get that emotion away, to go away deep within the recesses of your mind is a very difficult process. And it may be one that the therapist has to help you do. But they're all life examples of how we can overcome some of the narrative we believe about ourselves. You know, I mean, I think the fourth thing we need to consider and talk about are relationships. I don't think we spend enough time talking about that and how it affects the narrative in our mind and how it affects our subconscious and how we believe and what we think about ourselves. I mean, if you have a spouse, for example, who thinks you're fat, dumb, and lazy, that talk track can actually affect your subconscious. At some point, you're actually going to believe it. Because sometimes we do believe more the negative talk track in terms of subconscious thoughts than we do the positive. Just like a positive talk track that you get from positive relationships, that can help you as well. You know, Anthony Hopkins presented one time that people are like trees. In other words, there are only three types of people in the world. There are the leaves, there's the branches, and there's the roots. So who are the leaf people? Well, the leaf people are the ones that are there only for a season. It's about what they need or what they want from you, and only you. It's about meeting their needs, their gratification, or what they want. But these people aren't there for the long haul. They're only there for the season, and the minute a storm hits, the minute the wind blows hard, that leaf is gone, and those leaves are gone. You know, those people may abandon, those people may betray you. Those people don't care because they're typically being self-centered and selfish in terms of their mentality, and they want to move on to the next thing. And they had no intention of being there more than just a season. And then you have the branch people. These are the people that are around typically for more than one season. And the relationship is a little bit stronger, obviously, than the leaf people who come and go. But at the same time, the branch will eventually break. And let me explain why. These are the type of people that are kind of maybe in and out of the relationship. You're not really sure where they stand. Maybe it's a buddy that wants to get with you once in a while when he's available and only on his time frame, but not so much when you need him. Or maybe it's a relationship with a woman where she breadcrumbs you, where, you know, you think the relationship is going somewhere. She pays you a little bit of attention, and then you get what's called intermittent reinforcement, and then she goes away for a while. And you keep hanging on this relationship thinking it's going to go somewhere. You begin to think there's going to be some type of commitment, and there's not. And eventually, once again, a snowstorm hits, the wind blows hard, And the branch will eventually break because the relationship is not sustainable, because it's not about meeting your needs and her needs at the same time, or a buddy's needs. And then the root people. And these are the people you really need in your life. The roots are what sustains life for the tree, helps it to grow, become strong. And these are the people in your life that love you regardless of what happens. They're going to be there for the long haul. They're going to be season after season with you. And they see you. They see the good, the bad, and the ugly, quite honestly. And they're not echo chambers in the sense they only provide you the validation of what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear because they do love you. And you do know that they're going to be there for you in the relationship no matter what. They do understand that relationships are about reciprocity. They do know that you need to meet their needs and they need to meet your needs. And it's a two-way communication, it's a two-way relationship. They do understand that you can be vulnerable with them and they can be vulnerable with you, and it's relationship and dynamics that can be very fruitful, and it can help you grow and become better. But these are the type of narrative that you need to, I think, to maintain in your mind that help you build the confidence in the pathways that said, I'm not a bad person. I am lovable. I can accomplish things and I can do some things. Relationships are important. And if you're in one that's not productive, it's not going anywhere for you, let them go. You know, I've often said to myself, and I've heard it before, that if somebody doesn't value your presence, if they don't see how you can show up in a relationship, if they don't value what you bring, then let them value your absence. Because if you're willing to show up for somebody and they're not willing to show up for you, you need to move on. And also, I think it's important that you ask yourself, why are you in that relationship? Maybe you're in that relationship because that's the chaos of the relationship, and how you feel in the relationship has become very familiar to you because that's how you grew up in your own home. But once again, that's not healthy. So if you're being treated poorly, if you feel like you're going to be abandoned, if you're going to feel like you're being betrayed, but that's the only place you know to be because that's a relationship you understand and know, you've got to get out of that as well and understand where you're at. Men, some of those are some of my thoughts. I hope they helped you. Let's recap. We talked about how gratitude is beneficial. Meditation can certainly help. Challenge everything. Challenge the thoughts that go through your mind. Number 4, look at your relationships. How are they helping you or hurting you in terms of the talk track that you think of yourself? Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it today. I hope you learned a bit more about the conscious and subconscious mind. I hope you've learned a little bit more, not only about the knowledge of, but maybe think about what you can do to get better. It's one thing to listen to podcasts, but find one that you can take and you can hold on to and you can do something with and something about. And I hope this is one of the podcasts that does that for you. If it's not mine, I hope it's somebody else's. And I also hope that you can subscribe to the channel, and make a comment. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your point of view and what you think. I never claim to have all the answers, but I think if we have dialogue about this, we can discover more and more things that can help us as men to become better men. Anyway, guys, thanks for your time today. I certainly appreciate it. Hope you all do well, and God bless you. Thank you.